Hello everyone and welcome to another Daily Dose of Drupal. Today we are on episode number 151 and we're going to be going over how to use the entity reference module with views. And this is a little more of a complex topic, so it'll probably take a little bit longer. And if you look back at codekarate.com, Daily Dose of Drupal episode number 7 is where I first covered the entity reference module. You might want to start there if you don't know what the entity reference module is. I'm going to breeze through the setup of it, but if you watch that, you should get a little bit deeper understanding. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at smthomas3. Also, go ahead and follow at Adam Leering on Twitter as well, and check out our new Facebook page. And if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, go over to codekarate.com and sign up for the newsletter. But let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start by making sure we have the entity reference module installed on our Drupal site, which I already do. You'll also need the entity module in order to install the entity reference module. And we're going to be creating a really simple, I guess you could almost consider it like a CRM type setup, a CRM system or a customer relationship management system, where if you look at just this top section here, we're going to create a content type called contact, and we want to be able to assign this contact to a specific Drupal user. In this case, we could consider the Drupal user being a salesperson in an organization or something like that. We also want the user to be able to be assigned to a specific team. And if you haven't seen a database diagram before, these little lines here basically mean it's a one-to-many relationship. So a contact a user may have multiple contacts assigned to them. A team will have multiple users assigned to it. Another thing to keep in mind is entity reference with views provides two-way relationships. This means that if you only need one one entity reference field to link these, and you can go both ways. So if you add a field, an entity reference field on the content type, you can then find from all the users that have been assigned to a specific contact, or all the contacts for a specific user. The relationship goes both ways. And so that's just one thing to keep in mind. We're going to go ahead and get started though, and like I said, we're going to go pretty quick through this. So the first step is we're going to create our two content types and add our entity reference fields in the necessary spots. So we're going to go into content types. We're going to add a content type for contact, and we're just going to leave everything else pretty much the same just to keep it simple. We're also going to add a content type for team, so the salesperson is going to be able to be assigned to a team. In our contact content type, we're going to go to Manage Fields, find Entity Reference Field, and we're going to call it Salesperson. And we're going to have this just be a select list. If you had a lot of users on your site, you're going to want to use an autocomplete. And the thing to keep in mind is we are targeting the user, the Drupal user entity. You could use node, but in this case we're going to go ahead and use user. You can target any entity that Drupal knows about. We're going to keep everything else pretty much the default. And we should be good there. We're also going to then need to, so basically what that does is that creates this part of the relationship, or I guess right here, the user to the contact. So now we can tie a specific salesperson to a specific contact. We need to create this relationship. So we could create an entity reference on the team and allow it to select multiple values, and you could then reference all of the salespeople that are on that team. Or we can add a entity reference field to the actual Drupal user object or user entity, and that'll be able to create that relationship from that direction as well. So either way could work. It's more of just what makes the most sense for you. So we're going to go into our account settings and manage fields for the Drupal user entity. and we're going to create a field called team. It'll be an entity reference field. We will leave it a select list because a salesperson can only be on one team, but that also means that there could be multiple salespeople that have been assigned to a specific team. I'm going to leave everything else. Well, actually, we're going to come back in here. We only want them to be able to target team content types, so we're using the node object because team is a content type or node entity, and we're only going to let them select team. Okay, so now that we have that set up, we're going to add some quick content to the site. So I'm going to add a couple teams, call one team 1, and create one called team 2. We're going to make sure we have a few users on the site. So I'll create one called salesperson 1. You'll notice that there is no entity reference field here when you're registering the account. We might want, or to assign to a specific team, we might want to change that. So we're going to go ahead and open this up, go back into our manage fields, and we can edit this. And we can say display on the user registration form. So now if we refresh this, you come down here, you can see that I can select what team this salesperson is going to be on. So salesperson 2 will also assign to team 1. So go ahead and create a new account. We're going to edit this first salesperson and assign them to team 1 as well. And we are also going to edit the Code Karate user and assign it to team 2. Okay, we will now add some contacts. We'll just give them a name, and you can see that a contact can be assigned to a specific salesperson. It does show anonymous here, but I think we could get rid of that if we needed to. So we'll say this one's for salesperson 1. This one's for salesperson 1. This one's for salesperson 2. This one will also be, whoops, I clicked on the wrong content type there. Contact is what we need. So I'm just adding a couple quick contacts so we can see what will happen when we have contacts that are assigned to different users, or different salespeople in this case. I will add a contact for myself, just my name. Okay, so now we have a bunch of contacts and a few teams, and this entire relationship has been set up. Now is where we actually get into the views part. So we're going to go ahead and create 2 views to show how this is going to work. We want to create a view that will show basically all the contacts for a specific user. So we can, if we are looking at this, we can find for a certain salesperson who all their contacts are. And we also want to create a view that can be added to the team page that shows all the users or salespeople that are on that team. So we're going to go ahead and start with that one. So we're going to go to a team page here, and we want a block that's going to show up somewhere on this team page that's going to list all of the users that are assigned to this team. So we're going to create a block view in order to accomplish this. So we go into views, structure views, we're going to add a new view. In this case, we are going to be displaying, there's a couple different ways we could do this. So it really just, Views is pretty flexible. You can make a couple decisions here, and essentially it just depends on how you want to set up your relationships. We're going to go ahead and just say, call this team members, and we can go ahead and show users because we're going to be displaying users. Like I said, if you want to set up your relationships differently, you could still select content here. It just depends on how you want it to work. And we're creating a block. We'll go ahead and make this a table of fields, 5 items per page. Use a pager, that's fine. We don't have that many items, so we'll go ahead and click continue and edit. So it's going to show the username. Let's also show, say, the user ID, and why not show the email of the salesperson. We'll add these fields. I'm going to rearrange them to put the user ID first. Okay, so this is how it's going to look. As you can see, it shows all of them. We want to make sure that it only shows, when we add this to the team page, we only want it to show for the specific, for the users that are actually assigned to that team. This is where you need to start looking into relationships and contextual filters in views. Relationships, that is what's going to allow us to relate these different types of entities and display things based on how this relationship has been configured. So we're going to start by adding a relationship, and keep in mind we are currently displaying, if I come back here, this part, the user, but we need to limit the user based on this contact, or excuse me, in this case this team that the users are going to be assigned to. So we need to create this relationship inside views. So go ahead and add a relationship, and we want to select a bridge to the content entity that is referenced via field team, because we want to create that relationship to field team. So go ahead and hit apply, and we can go ahead and require this relationship. That way it'll only show users that have that relationship set up, which every user has that relationship set up right now, so it still displays all 3 in our example. What we need to do now is we know that when we add this block to a team page, it's going to know what team the page is currently showing. So in order to get views to know that, we need to add a contextual filter. This is going to allow us to filter down our results based on the page that we're currently going to be on. In this case, we're in the admin section, so it's not going to work, but when we get to the actual team page, we will be able to get that to work. So if we search for content NID, we can select that. In our relationship, we want, since we're actually showing the node for field team, we want to select that relationship that we just created. And here's where it gets a little tricky, but when the filter value is not available, we want to provide a default value, and we want to default the value for the content ID from the URL. This will basically tell it, if you're on the team node page, use that node to pass in through this contextual filter. And you could add some validation criteria to make sure it's only going to show or work on the team page. You don't have to do that, but that adds a little bit more restriction. And as you can see now, when we see our example down here, it doesn't work. We should be able to test this though, because if you come in here and find the node ID of one of these teams, you can find the node ID by looking, if you look at the actual URL, you can see that this is node/8. So 8 is the node ID of team 1. So if we come back into our view and we put 8 here, hopefully it'll work. And it does. As you can see, it shows our 2 salespeople. If we go to our other team, team 2, which if you look is going to be node 9, if we come back in here and put a 9 here for the team 1, you can see it only shows the other user that's assigned to that team. Now all we need to do is save our view, come into the blocks section, and look for our view down here, view of team members, and we will put this, we'll just drop it in the sidebar first, just so we can see how it looks, right above the navigation. If we come back to team 2, you can see it doesn't format well, but you can of course change that or put it in a different block. You can see on team 2 it only shows team members for that specific team. If I come back to the home page, that block is not there. If I go to a contact page, that block is not there. However, if I come back and go to team 2, we're just on team 2, let's go back and try team 1. You can see it shows the 2 salespeople that have been assigned to team 1. So there we go, that's the first step. The next step is to create a view, and in this case we're going to make a filterable view for a specific salesperson. So then a salesperson or anyone else that was in this company or had to log into the site could come in and see what all the contacts, who the contacts are and who they are assigned to. So we're going to go back into views, structure views, and we're going to add a new view. In this case we're going to call this contacts. We're going to show content of type contact. Leave all this the same. We can make this a table or any type of display format we want. Display a little more for the number of items. Continue and edit. And let's go ahead and add an edit link, a delete link, just so there's a few more fields to look at. So as you can see, now it lists our contacts with an edit link and a delete link. We now need to add filters so we can sort by a specific salesperson. So we want to make sure we only show contacts that have been assigned a salesperson, so we need to add that relationship. So we add a relationship, and we want to select a bridge to the user entity that is referenced via field salesperson. Go ahead and require this. If one of these contacts didn't have that field set, they would then drop off this list if we click that require checkbox. But we should be okay here. The next step is going to be adding a field for the specific user. So we could go ahead and add a field here. And we could select content salesperson, and we could expose this filter, and in this case we could select, we'll just leave that right now, and you can see this isn't going to work the way we want to though, because this is going to look for a specific salesperson's user ID, and we're not going to necessarily know that. What we would really want is for this to be a drop down here. So if we come back, we can do this. If we come back into structure, content types, and go to our content type, go to manage fields, find our entity reference field for salesperson, and we come down here and we say we want to render views filters as a select list. This will allow us to change that views filter to a select list. Let's go ahead and click save. Come back to our view. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Yep, that's just an error. We're going to go ahead and now just get rid of this field. We're going to try this again. So we're going to add a filter for field salesperson. Now you can see it shows names over here, which is exactly what we want. We exposed this. I'm going to call this salesperson. And we are going to go ahead and leave everything else at its default. We want to make sure it's one of these. Now you can see we have a drop down here for the salesperson. If we select which salesperson, it's going to show different contacts for this salesperson. So let's save this view and click here to actually go view the page, and we have our working view. We can select the salesperson and see the contacts that have been assigned to that specific salesperson. If you're building a bug tracking system or your issue tracking system, or you're building a CRM like this, or anything else where you need to build relationships between different Drupal entities, you're going to need the entity reference module, and you're going to need to learn how to use views, add relationships, and add contextual filters to those views. So that's it for this episode. I know it was a little long, but hopefully you learned a lot. Make sure to sign up for the newsletter. We have an ebook coming out soon, so be ready for that. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.